Hi, fifth grade. Today you're going to have to bear with me a little bit as my voice is kind of going away and I have a little bit of a cough. So if I start coughing in the middle or if you can't hear me very good, I'm really sorry. You might have to turn the volume all the way up. I promise I'm talking as loud as I possibly can right now. Today we are doing lesson 7.4, which is over patterns and relationships. Patterns seem to be pretty easy for most students. However, it requires a lot of following directions. So you have to make sure that you're following directions carefully as you're working with patterns. So we're just going to jump right in with number 1. A says, write the first 5 terms of the pattern that begins with 2 and then adds 2. So 5 terms tells me I need 5 numbers in my pattern, and I'm going to begin with 2. So my very first number is going to be a 2. It tells me that. And then it tells me how I'm going to get my next numbers. In order to get my next number, I'm going to add 2, which would make a 4. And then I'm going to keep the pattern going. So far I have 2 terms. My next term would be a 6, and then an 8. 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so I need 1 more. So I'm going to add 2 one more time to give me a 10. So that would be my pattern. Let's go on down to letter B. Write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 4 and then adds 4. So again, we need 5 terms in our pattern. This time we're going to begin with 4. And to get our next term, we're going to add 4 each time. So 4 and then 8. Then I would add 4 again to get my next term, which would be a 12. Add 4 again to get my next term, which would be 16. And add 4 again to get my next term, which would be 20. Now I have 5 terms. Letter C says, circle the corresponding pairs of terms in the patterns. So that means like the first terms go together, the second terms go together, the third terms, and so on. These are the pairs because I'm circling like the first term and the first term, or the 5th term and the 5th term. Those are the ones that go together if I was comparing these 2 patterns. How does each term in the top pattern compare to the corresponding term in the bottom pattern? So if I'm looking from top to bottom, how does this pattern relate to this one? So how do I get from 2 to 4, or 4 to 8, or 6 to 12? How does this pattern relate to this one? Well, I would take the top pattern times 2 to get the bottom one, because 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 6 times 2 is 12, 8 times 2 is 16, 10 times 2 is 20. So I need to write in words the relationship that these 2 patterns have. So I would say the top pattern multiplied by 2 gives me the bottom pattern. All I'm doing is explaining the relationship between that top pattern that I made and the bottom pattern that I also made. So the top pattern multiplied by 2 gives me the bottom pattern. Letter D says, how does the bottom term compare to the top term? So now they want me to look at the bottom compared to the top. So how did I get from 4 to 2? Or how would I get from 8 to 4? Or 12 to 6? Well, if I divided by 2, I would get there. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Or 8 divided by 2 is 4. So in order to get from the bottom pattern to the top pattern, I would need to divide by 2. So I would say the bottom pattern divided by 2 gives me the top pattern. So not only can we write our own patterns based on the rules that they give us, or the information, the directions, but we can also then use those patterns and look at them to show different relationships or how they kind of relate to one another. Now, as you get to your assignment, off to the side, I've given some helpful hints, like I might say, like look back at number 1 in your notes. this will be a good example if you get stuck when you're working on your assignment. So feel free to come back to this video at any time if you need to look back at the examples that we did in our notes. Alrighty, let's scooch on down. Number 2 says, write the first 5 terms of a numerical pattern that begins with 1 and then adds 9. All right, begins with 1, so 1 is my first number. Then to get my next term in my pattern, I need to add 9, so that would give me a 10. To get my next term, I would add 9 again, so 19. I would continue to add 9, which would give me a 28. I'm going to stop and count 1, 2, 3, 4. I said 5 terms, so I need 1 more, and that would be a 37. So there would be my first 5 terms in that pattern. Letter B just says write the 6th term. So they're saying if we kept going, the 6th term would be, well, we already have 5 here, so the next one would be the 6th one, and if I added 9 more, it would give me 46. Just following those pattern rules that they're giving me and using that to make my pattern and answer their questions. All right, number 3. Write the first 5 terms of a numerical pattern that begins with 5 and then adds 5. All right, begins with 5, so that's my first number, and adds 5. So that would be 10, 15, 20. I'm going to stop and count. 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. I needed 5, so I need to go once more, add 5 more. That would be 25. Did that pretty quickly because we should be pretty good at counting by our 5s, just adding on 5 each time. Letter B says, write an expression for the 6th term of the pattern. Remember, expression means I want to tell someone else how they would find the 6th term. So I'm thinking, if I want to explain to someone how they would find the 6th term, what would I tell them? Well, the 6th term is going to be the very next one. How would I explain to someone how they would find that? Well, I would just say add 5, because that was our rule. Add 5 onto the 5th term, because the 5th term was the one that was right in front of it. Now, I do not want to say add 5 onto 25, because I don't want to tell them what the 5th term is. They might not have figured that out yet, and that would be like giving them the free answer. So I don't want to say add 5 onto and tell them the number. I'll just say add 5 onto the 5th term, because that would give them the 6th. Or if it said like write an expression for the 10th term, I could say add 5 onto the 9th term. You would just add 5 onto whichever term was right in front of the one they were supposed to find. But I don't want to give them the answer to the one in front of it, because that would just make it too easy. All right, letter C says to basically use our own advice here and write down the 6th term. So if we add 5 onto the 5th term, 25 plus 5 more would give us a 30. Alrighty, we have a few more to look at. Sometimes patterns are also shown in tables, kind of like this. So for instance, on number 4, we're dealing with bicycles and wheels. And along the top, it tells me I have bicycles, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 bicycles. And along the bottom is the number of wheels that they would have. So if I have 1 bicycle, I would have 2 wheels. If I have 2 bicycles, I would have 4 wheels. If I had 3 bicycles, I would have 6 wheels. If I had 4 bicycles, I would have 8 wheels. And if I had 5 bicycles, I would have 10 wheels. Okay, so still filling in those patterns, we just kind of have to figure out what the pattern is based on the information that they gave me. Well, I know each bicycle has 2 wheels, so then I can figure out how many wheels each of these would have. Now, once I fill out the chart, I am supposed to explain the relationship between those 2 patterns. So it's kind of like we're writing down the rule since they didn't give us the rule to start out with. And we can explain this in 2 different ways. First, we could explain it with addition. I could say, add 2 wheels for each number of bicycles. That would be one way to explain this relationship between bicycles and wheels and to show them the pattern. So if I had one bicycle, I would just add 2 wheels. If I had 2 bicycles, I would add 2 plus 2. If I had 3 bicycles, I would add 2 plus 2 plus 2. I would add 2 wheels for each bicycle that I had. Or I could explain it using multiplication, because I could multiply the number of bicycles by 2 to get the wheels. For instance, if I look back up at my chart, if I had 3 bicycles, I would take 3 times 2, and that gives me 6 wheels. So I can explain this pattern using either addition or multiplication. Remember, before they were giving us the rule and we were making the pattern. Now we're kind of filling in the chart with the pattern, and then we're kind of explaining the rule in 2 different ways to someone else who might be wanting to solve that. Let's look down at number 5. It is about overdue books and their late fees. So it says the number of days late. It could be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days, and the amount of the late fee. So if my book is 1 day late, I pay 15 cents. If it's 2 days late, I'm going to pay 30 cents. If it's 3 days late, I would have to pay 45 cents. If it's 4 days late, that would be 60 cents. And if it's 5 days late, it would be 75 cents. Now, I'm going to explain the pattern or explain the relationship between these 2 things down here. And remember, we can explain this in 2 separate ways. So kind of think about, how did you figure out what the next number would be? That's kind of like the rule for the pattern. So I could use addition. I know that each day costs 15 cents, so I could add 15 cents for however many days my book was late. Let's put that as our first rule. Add 15 cents for each day that your book is late. Each day that the book is late. So for instance, if my book was just late 1 day, it would be 15 cents. But if my book was late for 4 days, I could do 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15, and that would tell me that it's 60 cents for my late fee. Or I could use multiplication. I could multiply the number of days my book is late times 15, because that's what it costs for each day. So I would multiply the number of days late by 15 cents to get the late fee. So notice again on this one, as I was describing the pattern or explaining the relationship, I could either use addition to figure it out, or I could multiply. So depending on how you were doing it in your mind. As I was filling out the chart, I was just using addition because that was easier. 30 plus 15 more was 45, plus 15 more was 60. That was easier. But if I did 4 times 15, it would still equal 60. So it just depends on which one is easier, but either one is correct. All right, let's do one more here. Number 6 is kind of unique. It's talking about the cost of concert tickets. I could buy 1 or I could buy 5 tickets or anywhere in between. And then it tells me the cost in dollars. Now this one is unique because it doesn't tell me the cost of 1 ticket, but it tells me what 2 tickets cost and 3 tickets cost. How could I use this information that they give me to figure out the cost of 1 ticket? Well, there's a couple ways you could do it. I could take 105 minus 70 to see what the difference is between those two. That would tell me how much 1 ticket costs. Or I could do 70 divided by 2 to see what 1 ticket costs by itself. or I could take 70 and I could count up to 105 and see how much is in between there, because that would be one ticket. Any of those ways would give you a 35. Each ticket is going to cost $35. So we'll want to continue on with our pattern here. For 4 tickets, the cost would be $140. And for 5 tickets, the cost would be $175. Multiple ways we could figure those things out. Then remember, I'm going to go down below the chart and I'm going to explain that relationship or tell about the pattern that is occurring here. And we could do it in 2 different ways. Let's do addition first. I would add $35 for each ticket being purchased. So for each ticket that they were purchasing, I would add $35 more because that's how much they cost each. So that's using addition. That's kind of what I was doing as we were going. 35 plus 35 is 70, plus 35 more is 105, plus 35 more. That's how I was figuring them out. But remember, if I can add, I can also multiply to figure it out. So in order to do that, I would multiply the number of tickets by $35 to get the cost. Because just like when I was adding, if I wanted to multiply, I could take 2 times 35, because that's what they are each, and get 70. Or 4 times 35 and get 140. So there's 2 ways that I can describe these patterns and the relationships that are happening in my chart. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I apologize for my voice or the coughing today. My throat is just having a little bit of trouble with allergies, I think. When you get to your assignment, it will say, look back in your notes for these examples. If you need to come back to the video and pause at certain parts to use that to help you on your assignment, feel free to do so. That's why the video is here. Good luck. Do your best. Bye.